Hi, I'm Kat. This is 10 minutes long and we're about to finish the window project. And if you've seen any of the previous videos, you'll know why this was a huge deal. So in the last video, I basically just walked away from this and was like, nope, can't do it. It's not working. Need a break. And I took a break. And in that time, I thought about what wasn't working and how I might be able to fix it. The conclusion I came to was that I needed to do it properly. I needed to drill a proper hole. I needed to use proper wall plugs or raw plugs or whatever it is they're called, because I still don't know. And then I needed to screw the brackets into the raw plugs. The other thing I learned was that I managed to strip the head of two of the screws that were provided with the blind. And so I needed to replace the screws, which is why I'm bending over for such a long time in the beginning, because I'm just looking for screws that I can use to replace. But the thing that I came to realise whilst drilling, which I haven't realised in the video yet, is that the screws that they actually gave me with the blind were a little bit too long anyway, so I probably would not have been able to use them even if I hadn't already stripped the head. So in some ways it kind of was a good thing that I did, because then it meant that I used different screws. So you can see there that I've actually just started drilling, and I've drilled a hole all the way through the wood. There's no like half-assed holes going on. It is a proper hole going all the way through that will accommodate the wall plug. And there I did damage the paintwork a little bit. So this has been like a hard part of the process, is like I've painted it, it looks really nice, and now I'm just damaging it. But there you can see the first wall plug going in, and I'm just hammering it in to the hole that I've drilled, which took a little bit of doing, because it was, I think they were plasterboard plugs, to be honest with you, but I guess we'll never know. My thing was just like, they have to go in there. I tried to put one in on the other side, but it didn't quite go because the hole was not as deep, so I had to use raw plugs that I already had. So they were black ones, so I was a little bit worried that I'd have black on one side and white on the other, and that would look weird when the blind was up. You can see there I had to take one of the white ones out on the right hand side because it was too long and the hole wasn't quite deep enough or thick enough, so I had to like re-drill it. But yeah, anyway, the wall plugs, the colour of them didn't matter when the brackets were up, you couldn't see them, so it actually wasn't as big a deal as I thought. So after re-drilling the hole, it went in absolutely fine. So you can see there that I ended up with 2 holes and wall plugs. So that already was like a much better start. I was like, I think we might be able to do it this time, which is good, because clearly just was not a good process last time. So once the wall plugs were in, I was able to just bung in some screws, and that made it much easier than last time, because I wasn't trying to screw them in with the bracket in place. I put the screws in and then hooked the bracket on as it was supposed to be. It did take a little bit of faff because maybe the screws were slightly too close together, so there was a little bit of faff trying to get the bracket onto the screws, but hey, the screws were in there, and it was a lot better than last time, because you can see there that, you know, even though it's speeded up, you can see I got it on pretty neatly and then just screwed them into place once the bracket had been slotted on. Safe to say that the process was going a lot easier this time, so you can see there that the right hand side bracket is pretty much done now, screwed in, all good. And then I just repeated the same thing on the left hand side, so put 2 screws in, slotted the bracket on, and then just tightened it up afterwards. The right hand side was a little bit more difficult because as I said, the screws on that side needed to be shorter, so I had to find shorter screws, and I had this whole thing with like, even when it was in there, the raw plugs were kind of not like fully flush, so I had to like clip them a little bit to make them a bit shorter, and that's why I was kind of like stood there for a little while looking at it. But then when I plonked the blind on, it was kind of like, yep, yep, that is gonna definitely work. So it kind of like gave me strength, if you see what I mean, because like when I had to take the bracket back off to readjust the wall plugs, it was kind of like, yeah, it's fine though, because it's gonna work. And you can see that what I did there was I just cut them flush. It was kind of, the hole wasn't deep enough to accommodate the wall plugs, but it was deep enough to accommodate the screws. So I literally just didn't even take the wall plugs out, I just trimmed them right where they were, and that would then allow the bracket to sit flush to the top of the ceiling. In retrospect, I mean, I understand now why the previous owners had a blind that wasn't quite as wide as the window, because fitting the brackets to the very edges of the window is kind of tough. It's tough from a drilling perspective, it's tough from a screwing perspective. So I think that did make the project a lot more difficult. I think maybe if I'd got a blind that was like, I don't know, 5 centimeters smaller, it didn't really need to cover the entire window. So that I think is probably a mistake, that like I need a blind for downstairs, and when I'm measuring for that, I'm going to allow a little bit of extra space for the fittings. So that was lesson number one. But this was like literally the first blind I've ever bought in my life, the first blind I've ever fitted in my life, so there was bound to be mistakes along the way. The good thing is that despite the fact that I bought a blind that was too long, I was still able to fit it, which is still an endless source of fascination for me. So anyway, here you can see that after I had trimmed the wall plugs, the bracket went in just fine. I did have to use a little bit of manual action as well. Like the one on the left hand side was just a bit of a cow to get in place, to be honest. And you can see that it's just kind of in and out, trying to adjust it to get it to fit properly. What I think is hilarious is that like my hair is just getting more and more messy throughout this. Like it started out just kind of not neatly tied back because it was a weekend, I think, so my hair needed a wash, but it was kind of like, you know, bundled up nicely, and by the end of it it's just all falling out, which I think is hilarious. So anyway, once the brackets were on, it was super easy. It was just plonk the blind in place, and that was such a good feeling. Like it's not captured on the video, but it felt really good to finally put that blind in and be like, yes, I have completed this thing. So yeah, as you can see there, blind in place, job done. So once the blind was done, I decided that it would only be fair to like finish the project properly. So there was a lot of dust around, having drilled the holes, so I got my dustbuster out. My dustbuster was a gift to myself when I moved in. It was kind of like, I wanted a dustbuster, and yes, this is like a totally indulgent thing to buy, but I bought it anyway. It was only 25 quid. I say only, but like it's quite a bit. So anyway, I cleaned off all the dust and just wiped the windowsill down. There were some cracks along the side, from the corner of the window to the corner of the windowsill, so I just filled those in, as you can see there. That was just because the paint hadn't kind of like, the paint had just cracked along there, just presumably because it was a split in the wood anyway, so that should have been done before I painted, but live and learn. And then I took the stickers off the window, and the funny thing was that the stickers left a residue, but I have this great hob scraper thing which is great for glass, so it just took like no time at all to get that off. You know when you peel a sticker off and only like half of it comes off and it leaves the other half there? That's what happened taking the stickers off the window. But I knew that had happened, and I literally had zero cares about that at all because of the hob scraper. Then I decided to give the outside a little clean, so the outside was a bit gross, and it was easy enough to just kind of like stick my arm through. The window does need a much better clean, but for now, like, it was just for the sake of seeing it clean and completed, and you know, I just did it basically. So yeah, there you can see that little bit more filler going in place because I dropped the screwdriver at one point and that just like dug into the wood and left a little bit of a hole, so I had to fill that in. So yeah, you can see that there was a little bit of like cowboying going on because it was just like, I have worked hard on this window, I want it to look nice. And yeah, once I'd done that, it was pretty much all finished. And then for the big reveal, basically. So everything's finished at this point. I feel really, really good about it. If you watched the other videos, thank you very much for sticking with me and for going through this project with me, and just know that a little bit of perseverance and thinking about things can quite often make a big difference. So here we are, me showing off the blind. Blind goes down. And then I also show you that blind also goes up, because I felt really proud of myself, so I had to slow this bit down and be like, yes, here is the completed project. So there is the window project, start to finish, including mistakes.